And so then we picked up our boats. We're like, okay, let's just choose a trail, follow it. We're going to stick together. And EJ was really worried. He was like, Danny's mother is going to kill me if anything happens to Danny. And like, where is Danny?
All right, we're back with another episode of Tales from the Crypts, bringing you another awesome story today that I think you're going to really enjoy. But you know the drill. First, a word from our sponsors. Please consider giving my sponsors some support. They help keep this podcast going by defraying some of my costs, and they also offer awesome services, or I wouldn't be advocating for them here. So, one of today's sponsors is Four Corners Riversports. To me, Four Corners is exactly what a paddling shop should be. It's staffed with dedicated river people who know the sport inside and out and are all about having fun and getting people outside. Four Corners Riversports is located in Durango, Colorado. They're a full-service paddle sports retail and rental store. If you're looking to get on the water, look no further than Four Corners Riversports. Call them at 970-259-3893 or visit their website at www.riversports.com. This episode is also sponsored by Taylor Barker with the group Real Estate Steamboat. I've known and paddled with Taylor for years, and he brings passion to everything he does. Steamboat Springs is a wonderful town with the Yampa River running right through it and has a vibrant and friendly boating community. If you're thinking of making a move to the Steamboat area or purchasing a vacation home, be sure to get in touch with Taylor. He's happy to give you a lay of the land, the real estate market, and help you find the perfect property for you. You can reach him at 336-314-4353 or by email at taylor@brokerintheboat.com. And you can find those links in the show notes. This podcast is also being featured on paddlinglife.com. Paddlinglife.com does a wonderful job of finding all the most interesting happenings in the world of paddling and bringing them straight to you in the form of news, interviews, articles, videos, and more. Check out paddlinglife.com. Now, on to the show. Hello, and welcome to Tales from the Crips, a whitewater storytelling podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Cripps. My guest today came to me by way of sheer FOMO. So after hearing that her friend Alex Nix was a guest on my podcast, she realized that if she didn't act fast, she might miss her chance at stardom. So if you followed the freestyle kayaking circuit over the years, you'll likely know her. If you're not so great at that like me, but happen to be an avid reader of Kayak Session magazine, you'll know her from her recurring column where she dispenses medical advice on topics ranging from avoiding illness while traveling to how to reduce a dislocated shoulder in the bottom of a remote river canyon. But despite the many miles between us right now and the wonders of technology, I'm able to talk to her today and she can share her story with us. So Jessie Stone, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm so glad that, I got over the FOMO and got you live. This is very exciting.
No, you had a interesting delay this morning. You had to put the donkeys to bed.
I did. I'm currently in Switzerland and I am donkey sitting and cat sitting at the moment because my partner, who is a mountain guide, is away on an expedition in Antarctica, of all places. So I'm here with the animals. Yeah, I think he'll have an incredible time on this trip. I'm slightly jealous, to tell you the truth, but at the same time, I'm happy to be here as well.
Can't go wrong with babysitting the donkeys and cats.
Definitely not.
Well, I have to address the elephant in the room here first because I think I'm on like my 20th interview now with the podcast, and you were the first female guest that I've had.
Woohoo! What a great way to start off 2024. I'm glad that you were
there you go.
perfect. I'm glad I was able to urge you out of the male only guests. And I can make a couple of suggestions for other women for you to interview if you'd like at the end of the
That would
show.
that would be fantastic. Actually, that would be
Sure.
fantastic. Yeah. In fact, I'm going to explain myself away by way of a little anecdote that I had over the holidays because there was like a group of us talking, and I don't know how the topic came up, but someone was mentioning Mike Pence and his like famous thing where he was like, I would not dine alone with another woman because it would vilify, or it would put into question the sanctity of my marriage. Like it wouldn't be a proper thing to do.
I
And
see.
I was kind of laughing about how ridiculous that was. And then somebody else mentioned like, oh, actually, I think that there might be something to that. And I was like, really, and then it came back to me. Well, have you, is this something you do? Do you go have lunch, by yourself with some other woman? And I like thought about it. I was like, well, if I knew any other women that to have lunch with, like, I guess I would, but I don't. So that's how I feel about the podcast. If I knew some women to have on the podcast, I'd love to have them.
Well, yay, I can help you with that. No problem.
Amazing.
I could be a source for women paddlers for you.
All right. Well, let's get into the story here, Jessie, because you've got I'm excited because you have not only some cool, just like individual stories, but an amazing life story that I think is going to be a great thing to share with the audience today. So how did you get your start in whitewater?
Excellent question. It was a long time ago. I started in whitewater as a whitewater rafting guide during my summers in college. I went to University of California, Berkeley, and as an undergrad, I spent one summer working indoors at an investment bank, and I was like, I am never doing that again. I need to be outside. And there was a really cute guy in my poli-sci class, full disclosure, like we struck up a conversation one day, and the subject of summer jobs came up, and he's like, you should become a whitewater rafting guide. I was like, what a great idea. Okay. Yeah. How do I do that? And I signed up for a guide school at Whitewater Voyages. And that was in 1987. So I'm really giving my age away now. And I went to guide school. I got hired by Whitewater Voyages, and I started guiding in California on the South Fork of the American. That was my first place where I worked. And then this cute guy in my poli-sci class and I started going out, and he, a couple of years later, got a job on the Zambezi. And I went over to visit him after my summer season of rafting, took all the money I'd earned, bought this plane ticket to Africa, and was like, I want to go see the Zambezi because, not just that he was there, but one of the guys who had originally taught me how to raft had said, I worked on the Zambezi. It's such an amazing river. And it planted a seed in my head. And I thought, I've got to go there. I want to be on that river. It just sounds amazing. So I went to visit.
Was that an intimidating thing for you to do at the time, or were you just ripe for adventure?
I was really excited. I mean, I was nervous because there were all these rumors about the river, big water, huge water. There were crocodiles, hippos, all these things. And I'd never been to Africa before, so it was a faraway place, and it just sounded incredibly exotic, but exciting too. And so, yeah, I took my summer earnings, bought this ticket to the Zambezi. And then on the day I landed, you had to fly into Harare and then take a small plane to Victoria Falls. And this was in Zimbabwe. Our flight was delayed, and we missed our connecting flight. And there were something like 2 flights a week from Harare to, Victoria Falls. And so I had to spend the night in Harare and then wait and get a plane the next day. But the next day, the incredible lucky thing was I got on the flight, and on the same flight was the owner of the rafting company. And somehow we struck up a conversation, and he's like, oh, you're a rafting guide? We're short. Like, do you want to work? And I was like, wait a minute, you were offering me a job. You haven't even seen what my skill set is or anything. And this is the Zambezi. I mean, yes, I want to work, but I was kind of hoping I would do that next summer, but I'm not going to turn the opportunity down. So pretty much as soon as I landed, I started training. They, threw me into a raft, first with my boyfriend at the time to train, and then with other people. And then after a week of that, they were like, okay, you're ready. And then I was sent off on my own to guide the rafts down. And it was really interesting because it was very different from the kind of guiding that I had been doing in California, which was all paddle rafts. These were all oar rigs, and they
Yep.
had these huge wooden oars that were like strapped down to the frame with this stuff called leckin, which is like old rubber tire material.
Hmm.
And your passengers just high sided in the raft. They didn't paddle, they didn't do anything. And these were all conventional 16-foot Avon rafts. So no self bailing boat, nothing. You had these
Oh
big
wow.
buckets
This huge
and
water.
huge water. And in a lot of ways, the crazy thing was a lot of times it helped you because sometimes like a giant wave would crash over the side of the boat and fill you up with water. And you were so heavy, you would just like
Oh,
steamroll through the rest of the rapid and not flip
yeah.
over. But the other part of that was there were so many rapids where you did flip. I mean, we were constantly flipping rafts and constantly having people in the water, including ourselves. And back at that time, there were no helmets. They did not have helmets. They barely had enough life jackets.
Oh
There
no.
was, in fact, one day when the owner of the company had an opportunity to take more people down the river than he had life jackets for. And so he did not wear a life jacket. He gave up his life jacket so he could get the extra business.
Whoa.
And yeah, that was really, I was like, they definitely do things differently here in Africa. So
Yeah. Talk
it,
about
it,
loose.
yeah, but it was just a totally amazing experience to be able to guide on that river
I'll bet.
and to see it firsthand. And it for sure planted a seed of, I really love this big water stuff, but also like Africa. It was
Hmm.
so exotic and interesting and incredibly beautiful, and
Hmm.
also tough and harsh at the same time in certain respects. The way people lived and the things they had to manage and deal with. Um, it was really different than anything I had experienced before.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that was the origin.
Yeah. Did
That was
people, I'm just curious, did the people that were guests on those trips come away excited or were they a little bit
what
wide
was
eyed, like we didn't quite
crazy?
know what we were getting into?
Many of them had no idea what they were getting into. Like many of them had never been rafting before. And they would arrive in Victoria Falls and people would say, this is really something you should do. And they would have no clue what they were getting themselves into. And so there was a lot of very wide eyed people, and it was committing. Like you walk down into that gorge, and once you set off, it wasn't like there was a trail you could hike out at the next
Sure.
rapid. There were places you could hike out, but you had to make your way down a big section of river before that could happen. So, it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
it was
That's,
interesting. It was
that's pretty,
definitely,
pretty wild
yeah.
river to have rafting trips down. Cool. So, I mean, that sounds like you were pretty hooked on this idea of whitewater and adventure
I
from the get go.
was. I was, and it's funny because when I started rafting, I saw kayakers in the river, and I was like, "Oh, that looks really scary. I'm not sure that I'll, ever be ready to do that." And after a number of years of raft guiding, I was really like, "I want to try that. That looks fun." I think I'm finally getting over this hurdle, like being ready to get in my
You're
own boat.
you're ready to evolve to become a better
Yes,
person.
exactly. Well, I don't know about a better person, but I was definitely ready to evolve. Yeah.
Yeah, just kidding to all the rafters out there. Uh, so I guess your summer ended there. You were just there
Well, so
for
it was
the
my
summer,
summer.
or
My summer did not end there because I ended
okay,
up not going back. I mean, I was supposed to be going back to school, and I just stayed in Zimbabwe. I didn't go back, which was great because you could do that pretty easily. and without
Mm.
consequence. I could go matriculate the next semester or the next year if I wanted to,
Yeah.
which was pretty much what I did. I mean, I stayed for a 6-month season, and you know, it was great. It was a wonderful opportunity for me.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah.
But then you did go back to California, went back
I
to
went
school.
back. I went back to school. I went back with a shoulder injury, which I had had before. Um, Before I started raft guiding that summer, I had basically, what I didn't know at the time, and this will sound a little crazy, is I had a recurring dislocating shoulder,
Mm.
but I could always reduce it myself. So
Mm.
I was like, oh, this is a painful, horrible thing, but I can fix it. And then what was started happening when I was guiding on the Zambezi is if I was really holding onto the oars and I would get pulled on, it was my left shoulder at the time, it would pull my shoulder out of the socket. So I'd have people in the
Oh.
raft and then I'd have to put my shoulder back in.
Oh my God.
And so anybody who knows anything about dislocating shoulders knows that the more you dislocate, the more you damage the ligaments and the
Yeah.
sort of capsule around the shoulder, the more easily the shoulder dislocates. And so when I came back from guiding on the Zambezi, then I was like, I think I need to go to a doctor and get this checked out, find out like if I can do something about this. Maybe there's, rehab or something. And
Right.
I went to see an orthopedic surgeon who was like, nope, you have to get this surgically fixed. This is not going to fix itself. And if you want to remain an active person, sounds like you do, you really need to get this fixed. So I was like, okay. And so I ended up having shoulder surgery. And the experience of having the shoulder surgery opened my eyes to medicine. And I was like,
Mm.
wait, what a cool profession. You can learn a skill. You can actually really help people with your skill. I think I want to
Mm-hmm.
do this. But that was the end of my college career. Like I was going to be graduating. They were kicking me out of school. Like, you've got too many credits. You have to get your diploma and get out of here. And
you were content just to go to school forever at that point.
Yeah, well, if you had asked my father at the time, he would have said yes, definitely. But but it made me say, hey, medicine, I really want to try medicine. But having been a philosophy and political science major at Berkeley, I had no science classes. And then I had to basically find a program, and I found one. It was a post-bac pre-med program that I could enter and get all the credits so that I could, proper coursework that I could apply to medical school.
Yeah.
So that was a weird trajectory itself.
Yeah, but you did. You got into med school.
I somehow, by some miracle, I managed to get through all the coursework, take the MCATs, apply to, a zillion medical schools, and finally I did get into one. But it required moving back to the East Coast. And which I thought, after living in California, I was like, I'll never leave California. It's so great. So yeah,
yeah. And now where were your whitewater and kayaking aspirations during all of this?
Okay, they never left. I mean, I got much more interested in kayaking, and one of the things that I had when I was raft guiding, I had taken this group down, and one of the people in the group was like, oh, have you tried kayaking? I was like, no, it looks really scary. I'm not sure I want to do that. And she said to me, oh, there's this great place in Oregon on the Rogue River, and they have a kayak school up there. And I went, and it was so much fun. And if you ever want to learn to kayak, maybe you want to check that out. And so in the meanwhile, I had also had the experience of friends who are like, oh, you're fine. Just come kayaking with us. Come on the river with us and you'll be fine. Yeah. And
yes,
when
the typical story,
the typical story. And so I had, they were raft guide friends, and I had spent a lot of time swimming rapids, which I was very comfortable doing, but I was like, that I know is not the point of this. I'd rather be in a kayak.
There's a reason they can roll, it turns out. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so I went to a to 4 days of a beginning kayak school at a place called Sundance Expeditions, which I then went later. I ended up teaching kayaking there. But that experience of going to that kayak school like completely hooked me. I was just like, oh my God, this is it. I'm never going back in a raft again. I just only want to be in a kayak. This is so fun. And so it was like a conversion. It was just I don't know. I got bitten by the bug, and it has never left me.
Love
To
at
this
first sight,
day.
man.
Yeah, and so then the summer before I went to medical school, I went to this beginning kayak um, camp or kayak school at Sundance, and then the summer after my first year in medical school, I had written to Sundance and said, "Is there any way I can come back and work in any capacity for you? I'm a raft guide. I have these
Oh,
skills, and I'd like to do anything just to come back and work there and, spend time kayaking and learning how to teach." And they were like, "Sure, come on back, and we'll find something for you to do." So I ended up going back to Sundance and helping to teach kayaking and doing some rowing for them and things like that on their kayak schools. But it was such a great place to learn more and to teach. There was such an amazing group of instructors there and really, really nice people. And it was in such a beautiful setting on the Rogue. And it was ideal for teaching people to kayak. Like their typical beginning kayak school was 9 days long. You'd have 5 days on the upper river, and then you'd float down and do a 4-day section through the wild and scenic section of the Rogue River, which was awesome. I mean, still is awesome. It's just an amazing river. So,
yeah, that sounds amazing.
yeah, yeah. And then it was back to medical school. So I did this dance back and forth between medical school and kayaking. And then finally, at one point, I got to this place where I was asking the dean if I could take time off to kayak, and the dean was like, "Okay, but just graduate, just like just make sure you get your degree." And I was like, "Okay, I promise." Um, but I really also made an unusual decision because after medical school, I really just felt like I want to kayak now, and I will go back and do a residency later. So that is what I did, essentially. Um,
Which I imagine is pretty unheard of in med school world, right? Like people don't do that.
Definitely very, very unheard of, and really, I would say, I say a residency, but it was, I would say, not the traditional residency at all, because it ended up being sort of, I think I may be jumping ahead here now, but it was kind of like with the founding of Soft Power Health and everything that transpired from the malaria outreach program there and the building of the clinic. That really was like doing your own residency, learning so much and so much sort of on the job training, if you will,
Mm.
in all these medical areas which had been touched on in med school, but really had no experience with outside of that.
Yeah, yeah. So you decided to take some time off, pursue your kayaking dreams and love. Where did that
Ex-
take you? I
oh, that
mean,
well, it
in the
it
short
took me to
in
some
the short term, where
very
did that take you? Because it took you
yeah.
a lot of places.
Yeah, no, I mean, one of the things that happened was I met Eric Jackson. I had been asking some of my co-instructors at Sundance, like, do you know other places or people you can recommend who are like teaching, or I want to learn more, where should I go? I want to keep improving, what should I do? And somebody said, I think Eric Jackson is giving lessons. You might want to give him a call. And so
That was a
I,
fortuitous person to meet for
yeah, well,
lessons. Yeah.
definitely. And I mean, it was
What
really
was
funny.
like? Where was he in his career at that point? How old was he and all that?
Oh my God, how old was he? That's like, because that was,
Roughly.
all right, let me try to think like what year that was now. That was 97? 97? Yeah. Or was it 98? Anyway, it was the later 90s. And I did call him up, and he said, "Yeah, I can give you a lesson." And then I ended up sharing a lesson with this other woman, and met him at Great Falls. Learned his sort of kayak program of strokes and concepts. Right then
Mm.
it was introduced as part of the lesson. And then he's like, "Okay, great. Now we're going to run the falls." And I was like, "Okay, sweet." And it was kind of like a
Whoa.
total intermediate syndrome. Like, "Okay, great. I'm going to go run Great Falls with EJ." Like, what a great idea. Now I look back
My,
on that,
te-
I'm
my,
like,
yeah.
okay.
My
So
teacher says
anyway,
I can do it. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I'm going to do it. And yeah, so anyway, that was kind of a real like pivotal turning point for me, because EJ had such a great method of learning. Gave me all this like homework, if you will, to practice when I left,
Hmm.
stuff I could work on
How cool.
to really help my whole skill set. And then after that, I was like finishing med school at that point. And he said, "I'm going to Costa Rica this winter, and if you want to come down, I can paddle with you again in Costa Rica." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds really interesting. Sounds good." And so I ended up going down to Costa Rica and paddling with EJ on the Reventazon.
Hmm.
And that was really interesting when I look back on, that was a section of river which is now dammed, but it was a fantastic section of river that was pretty continuous, class 3, 4, for like
Hmm.
a number of miles, in this
Oh.
beautiful jungle river.
What region of Costa Rica is that?
So it was right outside of Turrialba.
Okay,
And
so
so
it's not
near the
area.
Pequare,
Uh-huh.
it's kind of like that would be one of the good destinations really to go to for
Mm-hmm.
whitewater in Costa Rica. And EJ had used to go there and train slalom and then also do freestyle. He was doing both. So there was like slalom training that he could do, and different slalom team members would come down and he'd paddle with them. And then they would paddle, run the Reventazon and do all this freestyle stuff, river running freestyle after their slalom workouts. So that was fun. And I was definitely thrown in way over my head, because I was like, I'm not really ready for this, but I'm going, So, so I learned a ton. And while I was down there, EJ was writing a playboating book.
Oh,
And so I helped him edit the playboating book, like in exchange for kayak instruction.
it's a
So
good trade. Yeah.
it was a great trade, and it was really fun too. So that was like another kind of experience that was really kind of solidified my, wow, this is so fun and I can learn more. And, this is like, I just want to keep doing this. And then EJ kind of said, "Well, do you want to compete? Would you like to do freestyle?" And I was like, "Sure, why not? I'll give that a whirl. That sounds fun." I made contact with EJ, and then at the time I had another friend, Susan Wilson, who was also, early whitewater freestyle paddling pioneer, and also, river runner, ran all kinds of, you know, amazing rivers back in the day. And she was like, "Yeah, come, you can stay with me in my RV and all this stuff." So I said, "Sure, great." Um,
Hmm.
so I ended up going to U.S. team trials in 1999, and paddling my Necky Gliss at the time.
Nice.
And
Was like cartwheel the big move at that point, or what was the
cartwheels,
winning trick? Yeah.
cartwheels and split wheels.
Okay.
Those were big moves. And and the World Championships were going to be in December in New Zealand. So there
Hmm.
was like a very big excitement about going to New Zealand,
Yeah.
potentially. So needless to say, of course, I did not make the team, but I had a lot of fun paddling and learning. It was like a great learning opportunity, and that kind of hooked me in. I thought, I want to keep doing this. I want to learn as much as I can. I think I can do this, and I think it's really going to help me become a better paddler.
Hmm.
So, like, fast forward, I'm still doing it. And, that is whatever. Now it's like 25. Well, if we're considering it to be 2024, even though it's not the paddling season in the Northern Hemisphere. Um, that's been like 25 years of competitions that I've
That's
done
amazing.
since. Yeah, which is funny when I say it because it's also like living through different generations of paddlers,
Mm.
seeing what was going on then, what the boats were, and then how the design changed. So, for example, when I went to um, that team trials for no, it wasn't that team trials. It was the team trials afterwards. So it was 2 years later in 2001. I went to the team trials for the World Championships, and that World Championships was going to be in Sort, Spain. The boat designs had changed. The boat I was paddling, like my competition boat, was an easy, a wave sport easy,
Oh, yeah.
and
That was my first boat. Well, I guess almost my first boat. Yeah.
yeah, I mean it was a great boat. I that was a playboat for me and a river runner. In 2001, I took the Easy on an expedition trip down the Cotahuasi River in Peru.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and that was, yeah, I mean which, and now I think back on it, I'm like, wow. I mean, I ran the green in my Easy, believe it or not. That wasn't like a regular occurrence. I was certainly happier in a creek boat, but just to see if I could do it. Um,
Yeah.
and then the Easy was also, the competition playboat. Um, so yeah, thinking about that now, back then, um, I was on Team Wave Sport, and Team Wave Sport had a huge team, and it was kind of in a lot of ways like the heyday of freestyle in the sense that there was a lot of outside money that had come into the sport. So there was like
Mm.
bigger sponsorships available for people and getting a lot of attention. It's like an extreme sport, an emerging extreme sport. I mean, it was so, and then this big circuit of competitions. And back then, it was sponsored by Teva, the circuit of
Wow. Yeah.
competition. So there was like big sponsorship and,
Company that actually has money to spend. Yeah.
right, right. I mean, it was really fun. It was very, very fun. And then,
How
time
many
kept.
people? How many people were in those comps in those days?
I mean, I think what's interesting. I mean, like if you compare it to what we see today, I mean, the numbers were quite robust. I mean, there's probably more people paddling freestyle now than ever, but back then, the number of competitors seems, at least from my perception, seems like there were more freestyle competitors.
Hmm.
Um, the I'm trying to remember, like for team trials always had like 30 women and probably 60 men competing for team spots. I mean, they
Hmm.
were big events,
Yeah.
and they're still big events, but there seemed to be less people competing.
Yeah.
um
Because
these
most everybody has a playboat that's really into kayaking, but yeah, you don't actually talk to that many people that go to competitions.
Right. I mean, I also think there is that thing of there's an intimidation factor because I think some people look at what the pros are doing in a feature and they think, oh my God, I can't possibly keep up with that. So I'm
Hmm.
not even going to try. Um, that can look intimidating, you know. Um, and and I think that there's like a divide there, between
Hmm.
people who maybe would like to try and people sort of feeling like intimidated to get out there and try and just kind of say it doesn't matter, we're all having fun, we're all
Hmm.
learning, which is the truth. um, but the other interesting thing that happened was the boat design really revolutionized during that time. Jackson
Sure.
Kayak was sort of officially founded in 2003, and EJ started, continued innovating many boat designs and making the boats like smaller, lighter, it's just really driving boat design and forcing other companies to also innovate and improve their designs. And then on top of that, sizing the boats, so making boats not only like for small people but for big people, but also for kids, and that
Yeah.
opened up a whole new world of kayaking for people that really hadn't been there before, because there weren't kids kayaks. There were like custom made fiberglass kayaks for kids occasionally, but there weren't like production plastic small kayaks for kids.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, whether
Um,
you love or hate Jackson kayaks, I mean, you can't deny the amount of people that were able to come into the sport by creating, not just on the small end, but on the large end too, right? Like
yeah,
he was making boats
absolutely.
that bigger people could fit into, that they
Yeah,
never had really an appropriate sized boat before. And I
absolutely.
mean, EJ obviously
Absolutely.
knows how to make freestyle boats, like
Yeah,
great
yeah,
designs. Yeah.
for sure. So, I think then also that the boat design went hand in hand with new moves being invented, different moves, new moves that people hadn't thought of before. But
Mm,
with this lighter boat and with this more maneuverable craft, all kinds of things were possible. The moves started lifting off of the water, becoming aerial, as
hmm.
opposed to more flat. And like the birth of the loop, brought in all these other moves as well, and like combination moves. And so that's still going on today, which is really, really cool to see. And I think that's one of the
Yeah.
amazing things about freestyle, is that it's like continues to evolve and change. So it feels, like a real growing sport. And I mean, and for me personally, what has been fun is, my paddling has, like, however slowly progressed. I've improved, um, to enough to the point where I was able to make 6 U.S. teams in my lifetime so far. I hope that's not the
Oh,
end of
cool.
it, but it was also, what was fun for me about it too is, like, I was always an older, if not the oldest team member on the team because I made my first US team in my 40s, and that
That's
would be
incredible.
technically considered, I would be considered a master. That's when they
Hmm.
start doing like master classes. It's 40 and
Hmm.
up. So I made 3 teams in my 40s and 3 teams in my 50s. And
Oh, cool.
yeah, yeah, it was fun. I mean, especially going to the last few worlds, and one of the things that's been really cool is being, watching, let's say, I've watched Emily and Dane grow up in the paddling world. And so watching them be kid kayakers, and really progress, and then actually to be on the US team with them has been really fun
Mm.
as well. And even a couple of teams where, the people that are still paddling, like EJ and Clay Wright, being on the teams with them, plus, the younger generation is really fun, because it's like spanning this big generation of paddlers, and it's really nice to be able
Yeah,
to still be out there, feel healthy and good and able to do it.
absolutely. So unique too, right? Like how many sports can people really continue to compete at a high level for that many years? It seems like,
It's rare.
most of the time it's like, oh, I did that in high school and maybe college and then I'm done,
Right.
right?
No, 100%. It's like I think freestyle kayaking has got to be one of the only sports where you can crash all the time with virtually no consequence. It
Definitely.
really, the water's just a soft landing. So, that's like added incentive to, I think, continue to get out there and enjoy yourself, play and have fun, because I think the fun is also what drives it. Maybe you're out surfing with a friend, and they're doing something, you're like, that looks cool, I want to try it, that looks really fun. I mean, at least that's part of what drives me too.
Yeah. Do
And
you think that I mean, I guess what do you think you get out of competition that you don't get from just going out and playing at the local hole?
I think it gives you a focus, like a goal to work towards, and like a concentrated period of time where you work on something, like, because the features for the freestyle worlds are different. They can be a hole, they can be a wave. So it gives you an opportunity to really focus on one area of your paddling and kind of push yourself to achieve something. Let's say there's a particular move you want to learn or you want to incorporate in your routine, or a state of mind that you want to achieve during competition. I think, like, for me personally, that's a big one, to
Mm-hmm.
to really be in your perfect mental and physical sweet spot on the day and to bring it to the competition, and really demonstrate what you're capable of. I mean, that's a really
Yeah.
fun challenge. It gets
Yeah.
all your juices flowing, I mean, it's, and I think those kind of challenges are something that, you know, may sound intimidating or scary, and they're big things. You competing on the world stage, representing your country in international
Yeah, for
competition. I
sure.
mean, it's a great honor to do that. But I think it's also as serious or unserious as you make it, in terms of, it's not like defining who you are. It's
Hmm.
an aspect of you, and, something that if you want to progress or push yourself in that way, is possible, really, up to, I don't see an age limit on it. It's just more your desire. And I think one of the things that's really interesting as you get older is your mind. I don't know if this has happened to you, because, like, by our age differences, you're a baby. No, I'm kidding. um, but, like, your mind definitely starts to question whether you can do stuff. Like, whether are you sure you
Hmm.
can do that? Are you going to get hurt doing that?
Hmm.
Are you sure you want to try that? And I feel like for
Yeah.
me, I want to continue to have a conversation with myself about that, and not give into something that is, um, just fear, like just fear, and not legitimate. Like, okay, it's one thing if you really are going to get hurt, or if you are hurt, or you have an injury, but if it's your mind just saying, oh, you're old and you're like over the hill now, and why do you think you can do that? Then you got to have a little conversation with yourself about it. And,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
and
hard thing to find, right? Like if I'm feeling tired or off one day, is it because
yeah,
I'm getting old, or is it just like, no, when I was 20, I also got tired and was off some days too, right? Like,
for sure, for sure. I think it's
mm,
just, having that sense of, probably later in life, you do have more injuries, you have more things that have happened, and you just are, thinking about it more. But it's like that balance of trying to not make it the center of your focus, and really assess what your abilities and capabilities are,
mm-hmm.
as much as we possibly can, without, some kind of crazy bias one way or the other.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's cool. It kind of goes back to our earlier conversation where you're talking about the need to constantly find ways to challenge yourself and get outside your comfort zone a little bit, and how that ultimately
this
leads to a more fulfilling life. Yeah.
yeah, I think it does. I think it really does. I mean, the other thing that it definitely does do, if you're talking about the competition side of things, keeps you in touch with the younger generation of paddlers, and, like, what are they doing, and how is the sport evolving and changing. And that's
Yeah.
also really interesting and important. So,
Yeah, yeah. I think there's
I,
value both ways too, right? That those interactions between generations, like you get ideas and energies from them, and then they can also, by you sharing your prior experiences with them, they can get value as well.
absolutely. I mean, 100%. I think, the other part of it too is, like, as an older paddler, you can mentor, and I
Hmm.
always try, from my perspective, I really want to help instill in people a sense of giving back, to the paddling, beyond the paddling community. That's one of the reasons we keep doing this inner city kids kayaking camp, but also to bring younger paddlers along who are helping with the camp, and see how valuable it is, how much they can really positively impact other other people's lives, outside of the kayaking world. And that's really important too.
Definitely, definitely. What you kind of mentioned at the beginning, that part of your interest in freestyle to begin with was just that you saw that it could improve your paddling in general.
Yeah.
And I was actually just reading the like latest Kayak Session magazine where they had this interview with Dave Fusili, and
Oh
he
yeah.
he has a really strong freestyle background as well, right? And
Yeah, I was on the US team with him.
how are you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We competed at the Ottawa Worlds in 2015. Yeah, it was really
Nice.
fun to be on the team with him.
Yeah, yeah. He's seems like a among other things, he's also known for being like such a smooth paddler, right? On going big drops and creek boating, big water,
Yeah,
everything, right? And
yeah.
he actually met. So they were
they're asking him that in the interview, and he mentioned freestyle as being kind of the basis for that, right? He said the two key things are being able to read the water really well and having really good edge control. And you get that edge control from lots of freestyle boating, that kind of strength and precision.
Definitely, definitely. And you also get a lot of experience with being upside down underwater in positions you never expected. So, your ability to recover from the unexpected really, really improves. And I think that's very helpful. Like things that you didn't expect to happen. And then you can, oh, yeah, okay, I can deal with this. It's not going to freak me out.
That's one of the reasons I do it. I've never gotten into the competition at all, but talking to you, maybe I should try to go to the
You
local
should.
rodeo or something at
You
some point.
really should.
Yeah,
They're always fun events. I can promise you that. They are
yeah.
super fun events.
But I do on the front range, we don't have many good features, so that's why that's one of the reasons I don't do it as much. But I do make sure
Okay.
every year I go and do it. Like early season is good when things aren't really running that much, but you can just get in some little low water holes. And
Yeah.
but yeah, it's that reason I've discovered it's saved me many times in some hard water where I can get up and recover in a way that I would be in big trouble if I didn't
Yeah.
have that
100%.
practice of just
100%.
automatically feeling it, right? Because it becomes automatic. You get stuck in a hole and you're not really thinking about it anymore. You're just doing what your body tells you to do because you've been in there a million times before.
Yeah. No, exactly. Exactly. It's not like a place of terror. It's a place of like familiarity, and you're like, okay, maybe this wasn't planned, but I know how to handle this.
Yeah. I had one last question on this. Um, I know that there's been some like controversy, I think, during that heyday that you're talking about, the late '90s, early 2000s, before I had started paddling, but that some people felt like the sport had an opportunity to go in two different directions, right? It could kind of go this freestyle route, or it could go into more kind of like extreme boating, whether that's downriver creek boating,
Hmm.
racing, or big wave kind of features and stuff like that. And a lot of people criticize kind of the freestyle scene for dragging kayaking down into this sort of like
I
mess
don't
around in
know.
this little teeny
You know
hole.
what? I don't know if I agree with that because I feel like there used to be like the Subaru Gorge games and the Ford Gorge games, and that there were plenty of extreme races like on the White Salmon River, and they would be right alongside or sandwiched in between freestyle events, and everybody went to everything. So it wasn't an either or. It was like a everybody did everything.
So you think it coexisted? Yeah.
It totally. I mean, in my world, it did, and for many of the paddlers I knew, it totally coexisted. There were, people that, everybody who competed at the Gorge Games was also um, at the U.S. team trials. So it was, they were definitely together.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
and I
optimally,
don't
there's
think
room for everybody, so that's how it should be, I
exactly.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it would be wonderful. We could do that again. Because it was really fun.
So EJ had led you down this rather significant life tangent, but I guess at some point it was time to go back and figure out what to do with this medical training.
I had my degree, so I was like, there's a saying in med school which is P equals MD, which is passing equals medical doctor, which is which is the truth. That's like, so once you have your degree, that's the thing you've been like really working for. You're good to go. You have a lot more options and choices
Yeah.
available to you. So
Yeah.
anyway, I after that, some time passed, and EJ in 2003, EJ had said, "We're going to film these kayaking videos," and I had already filmed a kayaking video with him in Ecuador, um, and that was another like classic, crazy adventure, but really fun. That involved getting lost in the jungle in Ecuador, and surviving the experience. Um,
Which are you gonna give us that story?
yeah, so, yeah, yeah, definitely. So we went down there to film. EJ had written a book called Strokes and Concepts, and he wanted to make a video to accompany the book. So I had gone down there with EJ, with Chris Emmerich, who was filming, and with another paddler, really good young paddler, Danny Stock, who was a slalom boater, but also paddled freestyle really well and had never left the United States. And so EJ's like, all right, we're doing this. We're like filming this video. We're going. And, you know, I think Danny's mom was like, EJ, take good care of Danny, you know, his first trip out of the US and all of that. And we went down to Tena in Ecuador. We were like based out of Tena. And then we were filming nearby Tena and doing strokes and concepts. And then one day we're like, okay, let's take a break from this. Let's paddle another river. Let's do something different. And so the Missawahi had, like, we hadn't been there. So we're, you know, it had been suggested to us as a really good river. And we were told there's a portage, you know, and it's really easy to find the portage trail. And so it happened to have rained a huge amount the night before. And we got a late start to our day and we put on the river, and then we put on like in the middle of the afternoon. It was late. And nobody knew the river. None of us had been down it. You know, we were like looking, okay, where could this portage be? We weren't really sure how far down it was. And then, you know, and then eventually we came to the place. It was like, oh, this is unmistakably the portage, you know?
Yeah.
So we got out and we started looking for the portage trail and we could not find it. We're like, portage trail? There's no portage trail here. There's nothing here, you know?
Oh, God.
And so EJ said, let's just go straight up the mountain. So we put our kayaks over our shoulders and we started like trying to climb in this, you know, jungly rainforest terrain that was solid mud. And you take a step up and you'd slide 3/4 of the way back. And then you take another step and it was like straight up, and we had our kayaks over our shoulders. And so we did this like for a good hour to get up around, you know, like have a place to walk across, we thought, and back down to the rapid. We got up and we looked at and somebody looked at their watch and was like, it's 5:30. Aren't we at the equator where the sun goes down in like half an hour? And so then we're standing up there and we're looking, we could see the rapid down below. There was like no way we were going to make it back down to the river and around the rapid, you know, before it was dark. And so EJ said, okay, everyone, we're going to prepare to spend the night in the jungle. And so I looked at him and I was like, how do we do that? Like, what are we supposed to do to prepare ourselves to spend the night in the jungle?
Get my non-existent tent out. Yeah.
So the, you know, the thing about being, you know, this was like the classic story of, you know, why you don't really ever want to get on the river unprepared, because we had nothing with us. We had no water. We had one bag of Doritos and like a small, you know, like airplane snack size bag of Doritos. And then somebody had like a tiny can of tuna fish. And that was something. It. Yeah. No, it was something. It was, so we looked for a sort of a flat spot to like flip our kayaks over so we could lie on them. And there were no flat spots. So we found like trees we could prop them up against and like flip them over. And the sun is going down and we're like, okay, you know, in the morning we should be able to, you know, get back down to the river and, you know, figure our way out of here. And the one thing I have to add is that it was such hard physical work to hoik these kayaks up the side of this mountain in the mud. I remember at one point, EJ turned to me, he said, you should write a fitness article for a women's magazine about like what great shape you could get in doing this. I'm like, yeah, if you're like loony enough to go on an expedition with EJ to the jungle of Ecuador, you know, sure. Anyway.
That's awesome.
It was awesome. It was just a
I've had that thought myself before. I remember being in Arizona and having to do some portage in this Hell's Gate Canyon that we did, which was a great run, but we did it as a 3-day run, and we couldn't see our way through this gorge, and so it was just this, you know, like freaking desert scree slope with cactus everywhere, and we had to hike, you know, our boats up this horrible slope. And my friend was into this like fitness video craze or something at the time, and I was thinking like, screw these like videos, just take your loaded boat and hike it up one of these slopes. That'll get you into shape in no time.
Oh, and that is so true. There's no doubt about it. That's some good, honest, hard work.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anyway, so there we were after like we'd been sweating and sweating and sweating, hoiking our boats up the side of this, side of a mountain out of this canyon. And by the time the sun went down, we're lying on top of our boats. The all of a sudden, we're lying there and I'm like, bugs. All right, there are bugs everywhere biting us. They are biting every part of exposed skin. So I was like, all right, I'm not taking off my kayaking top because I'm just really going to get devoured. But the next thing I realized is I was so sweaty and then I was getting cold. And I was like, great, I'm going to get hypothermic in the jungle of Ecuador, because I got this wet kayaking gear on because I don't want to get eaten by bugs. So so at some point in the night, I was like, I got to just take all this off or I'm going to have hypothermia. And so I took it off and I was like, all right, now I'm just I'm a sacrificial, creature to the bugs out here. And everyone was just, bitten all night long. And so the last kind of thing that I remember as we're like lying there in the dark, is Danny saying, oh, by the way, like, is there anything we should be afraid of here in the jungle? And I'm thinking, that thought didn't even occur to me. And all of a sudden, I was like, wait a minute. Where do anacondas live? I don't know anything about them, but I know they're a huge snake. Are they here? And I was kind of like possessed of the anaconda thought for the rest of the night. Like, are they going to come find us? Are they going to eat us?
So you had a great night's sleep, it sounded like.
So yeah, no one slept. Like, and as soon, like first light, we were up, boats on the shoulder, and trying to get our bearings better. And so EJ and Chris were like, let's hike up to the rim of the canyon, and then we should be able to see where we are and hike down again. So we did that. We hiked up to the rim, and by this time it was starting to get warm. We had been protected by the canopy of the rainforest, but when we got up to the rim, it had been clear cut. Like all these trees were down. So we were just like in beating down sun, and everyone was really thirsty. The one bag of like airplane Doritos had been consumed. The can of tuna with the juice had been consumed by us, and we had no water. And so we were like super, super thirsty. And, we're standing there at like the rim of the canyon going, what is the best thing for us to do? And so the decision was made for us to hike out, to not even try to get back down to the river. So then we were looking for a trail out of the jungle. And we found this kind of what appeared to be a trail of some kind in the jungle. And we just decided to follow it. Yeah. And at the time we found this trail, there was also a puddle on the ground, and everyone was so thirsty, and they're all looking at me. They're like, okay, trip doctor. I was like, drink it. I'll treat you later. We can all drink the puddle. And so we did. We drank this puddle on the ground.
Oh, wow.
And then we followed the trail, and miraculously, after a while of hiking with our kayaks, because we still had all our gear with us, we came to a house, and it was a little hut in the middle of the jungle, and it had a barrel that had been collecting rainwater off the roof.
Nice.
It was the most incredibly welcome sight I think I've ever seen. Everybody was just like head in the barrel drinking water, but there was nobody around. The person who lived in this little hut was not there. So we drank water, and then EJ came up with a plan, and he's like, all right, we're going to leave our kayaks here, and each one of us is going to go in a different direction on a different trail from this hut. We're going to see what we find. We're going to come back in 1 hour. So all of us set out on different trails, except that Danny went on we didn't know this, but Danny went on his own mission. He's like, I'm going to leave this place. I'm going to find my way back. And he left. He didn't come back. So the rest of us came back, and Chris, EJ, and I. And then it was like, where's Danny? Oh, there's no Danny. Like, what happened to Danny? And so then we picked up our boats. We're like, okay, let's just choose a trail, follow it. We're going to stick together. And EJ was really worried. He was like, Danny's mother is going to kill me if anything happens to Danny. And like, where is Danny? So we follow this trail. We run into a young boy who speaks a little bit of Spanish and the local language. We could communicate enough with him to let him know that we were trying to get out of the jungle. And he said, follow me, I'll take you to my family home. And so we followed him to his family home, and it was this amazing hut, like far above the headwaters of what, turns out to be the Amazon, because all of these rivers are tributaries ultimately to the Amazon.
Sure.
It's spectacularly beautiful and remote. And they invite us into this, very primitive hut, and the whole family's inside there. And there are two grandmothers, old ladies, sitting in the corner, chewing and spitting into a bucket. And they sit us down, and they had a pet toucan. I remember this, who was on a little perch in the hut. And then they could see, like, we were hungry. We were filthy dirty. We were like covered in mud, like completely covered in mud. And they gave each one of us an egg that had been hard boiled. And then they passed around this bucket. And it was like, okay, I think this is the welcome drink. I think we have to drink the bucket. And the bucket turns out to be, their local fermented beverage, which is basically made of spit and whatever they're chewing. And so we all had to take a sip of this like fermented spit beverage.
Oh my
God. And then the older brothers of the young boy who had brought us to this hut agreed to take us down to the road. Like they were like, we can show you how to get there. So then we were, and at this point, I was really tired. I was like, I don't know if I can carry my kayak anymore. Like I'm pretty toast. And so one of the brothers offered to carry the boat, and we were going down, thank God. So luckily I had help getting my boat out of there, because I cannot imagine what would have happened if I had to like come back and get it. That would have been like a mission beyond a mission to get it.
Yeah, I'll bet.
So anyway, we hiked down to the road, and apparently they knew that a bus was going to come by at some point. And so eventually a bus did come by, and this is like the end of the next day, by the time we get to the road. And so eventually the bus comes, we get on the bus, and we are just like covered in mud. We're filthy, dirty kayakers covered in mud with our kayaks were different colors. Like EJ started that trip with a yellow boat and it was brown, by the time we got to the road. So then we made it back to Tena. We got off the bus, and this local guy who owned a local kayak shop, saw us and came over and was just laughing hysterically. And he's like, you guys spent the night in the jungle? Oh my God, that's so awesome, blah, 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 but laughing the whole time, and we're like, we are so tired. We are so thirsty, like, please, can we get something to drink? And then he's like, well, Danny came down and he went back to look for you guys. And at that point, EJ was like, he was here? Like, where's Danny? And then we made our way back to our hotel. And then about 20 minutes later, Danny showed up. Like, and thank goodness he did, because we were like, we're going to have to send out a search party for Danny. But so finally we were all reunited and all was well. And EJ, when we were making this video, Chris insisted on filming like what EJ looked like after being completely chowed by all these bugs. And, even when I look at it today, I'm like, that was bad. That was like, really, we were just covered in bug bites, like beyond anything you can imagine. And in my doctor brain, I was like, I think we're going to have dengue fever. I think there's just no way we couldn't end up with that,
Yeah.
And miraculously, none of us did. Nobody got really sick other than just being exhausted,
No dysentery from drinking out of puddles. No,
we were so lucky. It was crazy. I mean, we were very lucky. Yeah. Dirty puddles in the middle of the jungle. I mean, I guess that's a good dirty puddle to drink out of.
Maybe so. Well, that's adventure at its finest, and I guess
It was.
a good story because everything turned out well in the end.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I will tell you this, like during the whole thing, I did not feel like, oh my God, we're going to die here. We're going to be stuck here. I just really
Hmm.
had a strong feeling like we're going to get out of this okay.
Hmm.
Like it may be uncomfortable. It may not be what we planned. It may not be a lot of things. Um,
Yeah,
but we'll be okay. And it was kind of amazing that at every step we ended up okay. We were very
yeah,
lucky.
for sure, for
And it
sure.
was a good learning opportunity. Like never ever go paddling without your water bottle, like your little first aid kit, and some food, some spare food.
Yeah, most of the time it works out okay, but when it doesn't, you're really gonna miss it. Yeah.
Exactly,
What
exactly.
I don't know EJ, but his public persona, he always seems so positive and unflappable. Like, what was what was he
He
like
he
during the heart of the
remained
crisis?
he remained super positive.
Yeah.
He remained super positive. He was very worried about Danny. Which is
Mm,
understandable. He
sure.
was really worried about Danny, but he was definitely, like knew that we were in a situation that could be bad, but definitely he stayed very positive. I mean, there were some definitely hilarious moments, like prepare to spend the night in the jungle, as if like, okay, so what is that preparation? Like those kind of funny EJ classic comments, really. Um, so yeah, so
Yeah.
that was definitely a very memorable, one of like many memorable, not quite like that, adventures with EJ, but
No doubt.
yeah.
Well, while we're doing in over your head kayaking misadventures, you had a shorter one, less eventful one, but with our old friend Alex Nix and getting
Oh
in over
God,
your head on the Futaleufu with him.
that was
Don't-
definitely my introduction to the Futaleufu. Yes, I had gone down to work at the camp of Bio Expeditions. My friends Mark Goddard and Lawrence Alvarez Roos. Lawrence was the guy from the poli sci class all those years ago. But they once they started Bio and they had this base on the Futaleufu, they said, "Come on down," and I was super excited. So I was like, "Yeah, I'm coming." And so I got there and it had been raining like crazy. The river was too high to raft. And Alex said, "We're going to paddle down from, camp to past Casa de Piedra. And they're going to raft the section below Casa because that's the only thing that's raftable. And the section below Casa de Piedra is very mellow. Um,
Mhm.
and, but obviously if it's flooding, there's going to be something going on there, but nothing like the bigger rapids.
Right.
So very acceptable for rafting. But I'm like, sure, okay, like I'm ready, I'm game, whatever. And then so we put on, and I'm with Alex and this other guy Ario, and I think it was just the three of us. And in the first rapid, I rolled like 6 times, and I was like, wait a minute. This
Ugh.
is this is a little bit more than I bargained for on my first day on the Futaleufu. And Alex is like, just follow me. So we make it through the bridge to bridge section, and then we get to above Mas o Menos, and um, Alex is like, okay, this is going to be much bigger, and there's a giant hole out in the middle of the river that you definitely don't want to drop into. Okay, Jessie, follow Ario. He'll show you where to go. I'm like, okay, great. So, Ario peels out. I follow behind him, give him a little bit of distance, not too much. And then the next thing I know, I feel like I'm paddling in the ocean. It's like huge waves. And then Ario has like disappeared. Like I don't know where
Oh
Ario is.
God.
And then the next thing I know, I have dropped into the biggest hole in my life that I've been in. And I'm
Oh.
like, oh my God. And I was getting beaten. I was just getting like end over
Oh.
end cartwheeled. And I was like, ooh, this is not good. This is not good. Like, and, right at the moment, where I'm just like, this is, I need to come out of this hole. I don't know how much longer I'm going to like, survive this. The next thing I know, like, there was some divine intervention, and I was thrown out of that hole, right side up of my kayak, like in ready to
Nice.
paddle position, which
Nice.
up to that point in time had never ever happened to me. So after I'm in that position and I'm like tired, I've been, but I'm like taking everything I've got to paddle to the shore. I'm like, I got to get to the shore. So I get to the shore finally, like paddling, like catch my breath, and like really have a moment with myself, because what it was readily apparent to me was that if I had swum there, I probably, there's no way that I could have been rescued. There was just like way too much water, way too much, going on. And I
Oh, I
would
can
have,
imagine. Yeah.
you know, ended up swimming into Casa de Piedra, which was a rapid I didn't
Oh,
know then, since this was my first day on the Futaleufu. And that could have been, not so good, like really not good, like perhaps
yeah.
the
Like
end.
we might not be doing this interview. Yeah.
Exactly. So I remember saying to Alex, like, that's it. That's enough for me. I'm done. Like I'm today, that was great, but I'm going to walk around the next rapid, and I will, just like you show me where the portage trail is. And so we went down. I, you know, walked around Casa de Piedra that day and like put in below it. But and then we met up with the raft trip and all was well. But it was like a really scary introduction to the Futaleufu, which I was very grateful to have survived, But note to
Yes.
self, don't paddle the flooding Futaleufu on your first day down there. That's probably like a suboptimal decision, even if your friend Alex Nick says it's a good idea.
Be careful who says it's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah,
I can relate to that story so much because when I first went down there, I had like, it wasn't, it was like a medium high level. So it was, there was some water in there. And I think it was the second time running it. We were just doing the bridge to bridge section. I didn't know where I was going. I was trying to follow the helmet in front of me, and the helmet disappeared exactly like what you said. And I was
yeah.
like, oh, I'm in this giant wave train. I have no idea where to go. And I just dropped into this massive hole that I think they call like Jaguar hole or something. And fortunately I was on the edge of it and lucked out. Didn't really get a ride in it, but
Oh, that's awesome.
opened my eyes big time. And then maybe the next day or something, we were at the bridge to bridge takeout and trying to decide whether to go on or not. And it's funny how kayaking works, right? Because it's someone we had just met on the river that day, he goes down there, seasonally and spends a lot of time on the Futaleufu. And he was obviously a good kayaker, but he was just kind of like, he's like, oh, this is a good level to go do Masamenas and Casa de Piedra. Like the hole is flushed out in Masamenas. It's just down the middle, big wave train. And we're kind of like, I don't know, this doesn't seem like the beta we've heard before. And ended up, the group just kind of decided to go for it. And it ended up working out. It was, like you said, it was the ocean, but
Yeah.
it was what he described. There was just giant waves, kind of like, I think I did get flipped over backwards just on one of those waves, but there was no hole, and all worked out. But I can totally picture that introduction to the Futaleufu.
Oh, yeah. That was like, yeah. I'm glad it happened then. Now I probably wouldn't be as be able to bounce back from it as easily. Um,
Right. Good to be
yeah.
young. All right. Well, hey, let's kind of get on to your reintroduction to Africa. And
Yeah. So
yeah.
reintroduction to Africa was um, being invited by EJ to go film this playboating video, and to go to back to the Zambezi, but in a kayak, no raft this time, and then to go to the Nile. And that was in 2003. And the Nile was like, ooh, this new river in Africa, and like, who's been there? And the Zambezi was still also a wild place back then, but I had familiarity with it because of having guided there. So I really jumped at the chance. I was like, yes, I want to go. I really want to do this. This will be like fun and a little bit scary too, I know, but it'll be fun. And so I went with, it was EJ and Clay Wright and Jay Kincaid and Chris Emmerich came, and again to film. And
Hmm.
So we started off, just basically uh, running the river and, filming at these different places. And it was really fun. It was, the river from a totally different perspective.
Mm.
And then we were there for a while and we flew from there to the Nile, and the Nile was like, ooh, this other river. It's the Nile, it's like this giant river, and like, how's it going to be compared to the Zambezi, and what's it like, and all this stuff.
Hmm.
And that was really, really early days of rafting on the Nile.
Hmm.
And I think at that point, Alex, I think Alex had been to the Nile, and he might have been the only person I knew who had been to the Nile, and he
Really?
raved about it. Yeah. Um, other people were like, it's an incredible river and you definitely need to go. But, there wasn't a lot of information out there. And so the one thing that I did hear about before I left was how bad the malaria was in Uganda. People were like, be careful of the malaria. It's bad. And I
Right.
was like, okay, that's a good thing to know. So we got to the Nile, and at that time, Steve Fisher was there at the same time.
Mm.
And we settled in at this Nile River Explorers campsite. We were welcomed. And then, the river was right there. There was no like hiking into any gorge. It was like you just, walk right down to the river and paddle. It had this access that the Zambezi just didn't have. It was much more like wide open
Hmm.
riverbed and no deep gorge to like hike into. And we started, had been filming in on the Zambezi, and now we were set up to film on the Nile. And then like day two that we're there, EJ wakes up and he's just like, I don't feel well. Like, I don't think I can paddle. And this was absolutely 100% unheard of for Eric Jackson. He would never miss paddling for anything. It didn't matter how sick or injured or anything. He was going to kayak. So I was
Yeah.
like, something must be really wrong with him if he can't paddle, if he can't do this today. Like, something is up.
Yeah.
So, you know, he ended up taking a malaria test. It was positive. He had
Mm.
malaria. I ended up having to treat him. And I thought, this is so strange because he's taking prophylaxis. He's sleeping under a net. Like, how did he get malaria?
Right.
And then, as it turns out, little like side disclaimer, he had stopped taking his prophylaxis
Yeah.
because Steve had told him that real men didn't take prophylaxis. And both Steve and EJ got malaria.
You didn't mention that real men also get malaria.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that um, I was able to treat EJ, but he was knocked out for the rest of the trip. Like, he was not going on the river. He was just like done. I
Wow.
think at the end of the trip, he had like maybe one day of paddling, but he was really, really sick.
Wow.
And that was incredibly sobering to me because, here was this like, incredibly strong, healthy, unstoppable kayaker who was just laid, cut in his tracks right there
Sure.
down.
About as healthy as someone could possibly be and
Yeah.
prepared to deal with sickness. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it really made me ask a bigger question, which was like, wow, how does the average local person deal with malaria? Are they sick all the
Mm.
time? Do they own mosquito nets? Like, what do they do?
Hmm.
And that got my medical curiosity going. And I was introduced through the campsite, the Nile River Explorers campsite that we were staying at, to this woman who had started a nonprofit that was working in local schools doing education interventions. And she introduced me to a woman from the village we were staying in who spoke perfect English and Lusoga, the local language, and she said, listen, if you want to do a survey, you want to go talk to people about malaria, I'll go with you. I can translate, I know the village. And And so off we went with our little, questionnaire about, do you know how malaria is transmitted? And do you own a mosquito net? And how much money do you spend a month on treatment of malaria? And,
Hmm.
are you interested in learning more? And just, a whole series of questions to just kind of assess what was going on.
Right.
And we went to 50 homes, interviewed, 50 families, and found out that not a single person that we interviewed understood how malaria was transmitted,
Hmm.
and not a single person owned a mosquito net.
Hmm.
And people reported spending a significant portion of their income every month on taking a family member to the hospital for treatment.
Wow.
And everybody we talked to was interested in learning more and learning about prevention,
It's
and
amazing.
even purchasing mosquito nets at prices that they could afford. So I was like, wow, this is really positive. We could develop, a little malaria curriculum and do some education and, help people to help themselves prevent malaria. And so subsequently, we were able to mobilize everybody in the village, and they came to this education session that we were able to set up, and asked tons of questions, and everybody was like very psyched on this. And at the end of it, they were saying, where can we buy mosquito nets? Can you help us get
Hmm.
nets? And that was like getting me thinking about how would we do that?
Yeah.
And but it was very positive. And then that led to, the sort of what happened in that village led to the neighboring village to like call this woman and say, hey, I hear you're doing this thing. Would you come to our village and do it too?
Oh,
And
wow.
so, that was also really cool. And
Yeah.
so there was definitely like a palpable need for this educational intervention. And then at the same time, it was time to go back home. Um, the mayor of the village that we were introduced to, obviously helped us to put the education session together. But then he saw how positively the community reacted, and he said, well, if we donate community land, would you build us a clinic? And I thought,
Wow. That's amazing.
sure, I know nothing about this, but why not? Oh, I could do that. Yeah, why not? What a good idea.
Did you hesitate at all
And
there? Or were you like, I
I,
don't know if I
I,
want to get into
I,
this?
I didn't,
Yeah.
like I did not. I was just like, what a great idea.
Let's go
Sure.
for it. How cool.
This was since I didn't really have there was no like pre-planned career trajectory. At this point it was like where the rivers are taking me and what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, so basically I then was able to go back and raise money to build a clinic. Was raised $25,000, and that built an entire clinic that included the solar power system for electricity, the water system, and all the equipment for the clinic.
Where were
And
the funds coming from? How did you raise the money?
I had a little fundraiser back in New York, and people donated. People were, excited about this, and
Hmm.
so that's how it happened.
Hmm.
And and I didn't have an idea like, oh, I'm going to be staying in Uganda forever, or anything like that. I just thought, well, this is a good thing to do. This is one step, and we'll see where this goes. And
Yeah.
the wonderful thing was I could go back. When I went back, I was always kayaking, and at this point continuing with the malaria education outreaches, and then working on actually constructing this clinic. And that was the genesis, the start of Soft Power Health. That was really
Hmm.
when we started. And so looking at 2024, now we are celebrating our 20-year anniversary, which is like
Wow.
really hard to believe, on this like unplanned career trajectory. Um, which has, I've been super lucky because I've been able to continue to paddle as much as I want, and work on this healthcare initiative, providing a lot of education and prevention. We now have 6 health education outreaches that cover topics like malaria, family planning, malnutrition, domestic violence, physical therapy, organic gardening, all directed at,
Wow.
patients and people that can't get to the clinic. And then the clinic now is really busy. We're the second largest deliverer of healthcare in Jinja district, the district we're located in. And we, this past year, we saw over 35,000 patients at the clinic. So between the outreach programs and the clinic, we are able to provide education, prevention, and treatment for close to 60,000 people. So it was just over 55,000 people this past year. So that was
That's absolutely amazing. Starting
it's
from just curiosity about how the local population was handling malaria, all the way to
yeah.
that.
I mean, it's
That's incredible.
but it's a fun. I think that to me, this like when I really think about it, it was all these doors opened for me and kind of made the ability to do this really easy. Like it was not hard to start all this. And I mean, if I hadn't have raised the money for the clinic, that was not a hard thing either at the time. Um, so if these things, if they'd been difficult, I don't think I would have, continued on that path.
Hmm.
Um, but the other thing that made it really doable too was that I got to kayak like every single day. And
Yeah.
even with the dams that have been built on the Nile now, they're still really good whitewater to paddle. So it's not like the river was, but it's still amazing whitewater. And it's still like really worth paddling and seeing and experiencing. I mean, the Nile is like no other river that you've ever seen. It's
Sure.
just, it's the main artery of the African continent, and it's home to so much life. So
Yeah.
it's
Speaking of
worth
what was the
experiencing.
what was the kayaking scene like before the dam started going in?
Oh my God, the kayaking scene was so fun and crazy. I mean, there were people, it was like a place where migratory birds go in the wintertime. Like everybody came there to paddle. And people from all over the world would come there to paddle. And it was really fun, really, really fun because you got to reconnect with people and meet people and see people. And I mean, I remember literally, um, there was a guy who I had done an expedition on the Cotahuasi River with BOBO expeditions, like, and it was in Peru
Mm-hmm.
years before, and he showed up on the Nile. He was from Peru. I was like, wow, you came a long way to go kayaking. But I mean, it was that kind of environment.
Yeah.
It was really fun.
What about the whitewater makes it so unique that you say it's not like anywhere else in the world?
I think it's the size of the river, the fact that it has all different levels of whitewater. It's not like a solid class five river. There are a couple of class five rapids, and then there's like every kind of rapid in between, and it's warm water. Um, so it feels really good to be in the water. Um, it runs all year long. It doesn't, there are fluctuations, but there's never a time when like there isn't enough water or there's too much water.
Mm-hmm.
You're always going to be able to find something to paddle. And, regardless of whether, Uganda doesn't have the same kind of climate as say the Zambezi does, where there's like a dry season, a wet season. And obviously the Zambezi, now you can paddle most of the year round too. But the Nile is easier access as well. Like there are
Mm-hmm.
many points of access to the river. And whereas like the Zambezi is much more particular about places where you can go into the gorge and hike out of the gorge.
Right.
Um, the Nile in that sense is more user friendly.
Hmm.
Um, and the Ugandan people are incredibly welcoming and friendly as well. So that
Hmm.
makes the whole experience of being there really fun. And
Yeah.
yeah, really, really nice, like very positive experience.
Yeah. Do you have crocs, hippos, other wildlife that you have to worry about in that
Well, of
area?
course, that is such a good question because, there are the Nile, the famous Nile crocodile is named for the Nile.
Yeah.
But in that section of the river, the big game, like the crocodiles and the hippos, were killed off during Idi Amin's reign.
Hmm.
So they were pretty much eliminated from that part of the river, which doesn't mean there isn't the occasional crocodile that comes down from Lake Victoria or the occasional hippo that has come down in the past. But those are very, very rare occurrences.
Hmm.
And there's so much human pressure on the river because there's so much access. I mean, people use the river
Oh,
for, not only collecting water for their own, like, gardening and water use, but, bathing, swimming, washing clothes, you name it. It's an integral part of their life. So people are constantly in and out of the river, fishing as well. That if there were a lot of crocs or there were crocs killing people, the crocs would be killed off.
I see.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that there's no way to know that every part of the river is like croc free in this area, but
Right.
for the
But
most
it's a
part,
relatively small concern.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I would say it is not something on my mind when I'm paddling there happily, you know.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Um,
So
so
the how going back to the clinic, how involved are you like on an annual basis currently?
Well, so it's really, I mean, soft power health has become my full-time work now. So I'm in Uganda 3 times a year, for chunks of time. And, when I'm there, I don't need to be there for the clinic to function, which is really good. So we have an entirely Ugandan staff of 100 people, and that includes doctors, nurses, laboratory technicians, physical
Cool.
therapists, people who do, administrative work and like keep the clinic running on a daily basis. Um, local educators, drivers, gardeners, cooks, cleaners,
Wow.
all the support staff, and sort of we have a huge range of people who work there, in terms of like education and background, and but all Ugandan, and we have a country manager who is from Australia. Um, but the rest of the staff, 100 people, are Ugandan.
Hmm.
So
Very cool.
it's yeah, yeah. It's really amazing to see what how well it runs and how great things function, and especially when I'm not there. That's really nice because it's got to be that way for it to survive.
Yeah, that's great that you've got it. You've got the foundation built so well now that it
Yeah.
can
I mean,
can
I
run.
will say, we have come up with a model that works well too, because it's not free medical services. They're heavily subsidized. So it's
Hmm.
aimed at people who have very limited means, but it's something that people can afford. And so there's a value for the service. And if you pay for when you pay it's a flat fee. It includes your consultation with the doctor, all your laboratory testing, and all the medicines you need.
Hmm.
And so in Uganda, that's quite rare to have, like, to pay one fee and get all of those things in one place. That pretty much
Hmm.
doesn't exist. So
Wow.
that also helps us be more, the price is affordable, plus we're reliable and good, so it makes us popular.
Yeah,
But
I'll bet.
that's also truly because the bar is quite low, in terms of like healthcare delivery. It's
Right.
it's a
Right.
very low bar.
Is it
Yeah.
is the subsidy by the Ugandan government, or are there other sources for that?
No, I mean the so people they pay 20,000 Ugandan shillings for a visit. So that's equivalent to about $5.50 to pay for everything
Oh
in
wow.
yeah. And then when I'm not in Uganda, I'm raising money to keep everything else going.
I see.
So yeah, so from donors in the U.S. and also abroad, anybody who's interested to support us, we'd be very happy for their support.
Yeah, you'll have to give me some links and we can put in the
Yeah,
show notes
definitely.
that
For
if people
sure.
are
We are a
interested.
registered 501(c)(3), so all donations are tax deductible. So
What about help along the way? Because you kind of mentioned that in the early days, you had some people come in and kind of help you out.
well, we definitely, like, over the years, we've had, like, early on, like when we were constructing the clinic, we had like Emily, Nick, Dane helped build the clinic, and EJ was there too. And they were all there for the opening of the clinic, which was really, it was really fun to be able to share that with them, to
Yeah,
see that. And
that
then,
was cool for me to hear. Yeah.
yeah, no, definitely. And so every year, pretty much, they've come back up until the pandemic. And then after the pandemic, it's been harder for people to come back. But Emily still comes every year, and she's coming again this February to work with me. So it's great opportunity to keep her connected to what we're doing. And then also we get to paddle. So it's really fun for me as well. Hopefully
Yeah.
for her too.
It's a nice little incentive to go there and help. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Um,
anytime you want to come, Kevin, please.
I,
If
you
you haven't
know,
been to the Nile,
I would,
it's well worth it.
I'm sold. I would love to. Like that sounds like an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Once I, as we discussed on the outset, once I get this shoulder better, maybe it's in the cards sometime.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Well, how about we move back to domestic? Well, what's maybe for you, it's hard to say, but back to the United States.
Sure. Sure.
Because you've kind of, I mean, I guess you got a bug for kind of ways to broaden your reach and help other people, and you found some ways to do that in the U.S. as well that sound really unique.
Yeah. Well, I think, through through the paddling network that I met, and then like meeting the Jackson family, and continuing on competing for so long, because if I think about it now, it's basically I started competing in 1999, and then I've been competing like since then up to well, now we're 2024, but like through 2023. So that's like many years of competing. And so I've met so many paddlers through that. And the Jacksons have always been really interested in any sort of crazy idea I came up with. And so in 2002, after, no, yes, that's right, 2002, I'm getting my years mixed up now. After 9/11 had happened, um, you know, prior, I thought it would be really great if we can get inner city youth from New York City. I am a New Yorker, not from New York City, but I am from the state of New York. It would be great if we could get inner city youth like to kayak and out on the waterways around New York. They have access to water, and I kept thinking, if I was a kid growing up in New York and I like witnessed this craziness of the Twin Towers going down, I wonder what I would think my future was going to be like. Like, is it going to be like a
Yeah.
horrific sci-fi film? Wouldn't it be great to get out into, the nature that is around me and do something I enjoy, that's fun, that I have some control over? And so with this kind of crazy idea, I was introduced by a former kayak student who had been Martha Stewart, the one and only, to an organization in New York called Boys and Girls Harbor. And I was introduced to somebody who, I had this idea. I would like to teach them to kayak. And they said, great, we will connect you with a group of students who we think would be really good for this. And it turned out to be their Upward Bound program. And those are all kids who had none of their parents had gone to college, but they were all really motivated to go to college. They wanted to go.
Hmm.
So we started the program at Boys and Girls Harbor. They had a swimming pool. So we started in their swimming pool. Many of these kids didn't swim. And so we always had them in life jackets, and that's true up to the present day when we teach this camp. And from the pool, we went to the Hudson, and then we went to two rivers in Connecticut. We went to the Housatonic River and to the Farmington River. And it's it's structured as a day camp, so the kids go home, but they get whitewater immersion and instruction all day.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first year was like an experiment. Can we do this? Like, what are the logistics? And it worked out really well. And so every year since 2002, we've been doing this camp. We have ended up working with different organizations because the Upward Bound program we were working with lost its funding at one point, which was really sad. And then we were asked to come teach at another school called the Graham Wyndham School, which we taught at through COVID. And then COVID, they lost their funding and completely restructured their program, which was also really sad for the kids because,
Yeah.
it was like, what happened to those kids? I don't know.
Yeah.
And then we were able to find another school to work with thanks to a really dedicated teacher kayaker named Sean Coffey. He connected us to a place called Green Chimneys, which is outside of New York City. And we have been working with them since 2021 and
Cool.
have had really amazing camps. And it's been also really fun for me because I started doing this with EJ way back when, still doing it with EJ today. But
Nice.
it's also been great because Dane and Emily and Nick have like grown up doing this camp with us, so usually all of them come back and do the camp every summer. Although Dane has been busy the last few summers, but we always have like a really fun, wonderful time, and the kids just love it. So that's and we get a lot of local support too. Local paddlers come help, and it just it's a wonderful thing to still be able to do and to bring to these kids. This past year, we did a second camp down in Columbus, Georgia, where the World Championships of freestyle
nice.
kayaking were, because that river and that setup is like one of the best, easiest places to teach people to kayak that I've ever been to, so hopefully that will continue for that community.
Yeah. Do you get a sense of how that affects kids' lives once they leave the camp? Do they carry it
Well,
over
we
into
have
their
a lot,
lives?
we get a lot of returning students because they love
Yeah,
it so much.
that's
And the
awesome.
word of mouth, that's kind of how are we doing? The word of mouth is really good about the camp. So people tell their friends, and then you get a lot of kids that want to sign up. Sometimes we don't have enough room for all the kids, but
Yeah.
usually we can fit them in like the next year if we can't fit them in that year. And then we've been asked to go to teach a camp in the Bronx. So I'm investigating that, and another one out in Sacramento. So it's just kind of working with everybody's schedules and times to see what may be possible, to do.
Sure. It's
But
cool.
that's
It's cool
been,
to hear that. Yeah, it's cool to hear that there's demand for that and possibly a model that's extensible to reach more people.
I think there's definitely a model. The only issue is just the only sort of limiting factors are like, are you located near a river? Are you
Mm-hmm.
wherever you may be, and gear. Like the boats, the paddles, the helmets, the life jackets, the spray skirts, like the basic essentials.
Sure.
I I got a lot of gear donations early on, and we're still using some of the original equipment from back then, which is really kind of amazing. We have some upgrades, of course, but that's
Yeah.
been really lucky to still be able to use a lot of that gear.
Yeah. That's so cool. You
Yeah.
you mentioned Martha Stewart. Can you tell us about the Martha Stewart video?
So, when Martha Stewart had her Martha Stewart Living TV show, um, she came out to Sundance, where I used to teach kayaking, and learned how to kayak with me. And she was doing a show on the area. So part of the episode was like her learning to kayak on the Rogue River. And then she did a salmon cooking ceremony with Agnes Pilgrim, who was the oldest living um, Native American from the particular tribe that inhabits the Rogue Indian tribe that inhabits that area. And then the last thing she covered was a wildlife rescue rehabilitation place that was also in the area. So it was like a show that was really focused on the outdoors and activities outdoors. Plus, there was a little cooking thrown in with the salmon cooking ceremony, and and it was no, I mean it was really fun. It was Martha was a really good student. She was definitely like
Yeah.
determined, and that was very cool.
She built up some strength in prison, like hitting the weights or.
This was before prison.
Oh,
This was before prison.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and she came with her sister and her niece. You know, so we had 3 students on the program, which was
That's
fun.
so cool.
Yeah.
What a cool thing. All right. Well, yeah. So I mean, we can kind of try to wrap it up there. But I think I
Yeah.
had when you gave me the when you kind of gave me the rundown of what you wanted to talk about initially, I think I had the same reaction that I have now, which is like, what an amazing template your life has been for just like having lots of adventure, going kayaking, and then also finding ways to like really do meaningful contributions to the world and the people around you. I just think it's such a cool story that it's great to hear, and I'm excited to share it.
Well, thanks, Kevin. Thank you very much. It's all,
Yeah.
somehow it all leads back to the river and kayaking and paddling. And I guess I got, a little also eddied out in the whole competition world because I'm still doing that today.
Yeah, which is
You know,
fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, which has been
Well,
really, really fun as
I mean,
well.
how much do you think luck has played a role in that life trajectory?
Oh, I think luck has definitely played a huge role. I mean, I was so freaking lucky that I was spat out upright out of that hole on the Futaleufu. I mean, it was, are you kidding? The only thing that was luck, like, or divine
Mm,
intervention. That was just, no, I mean, I think there's been a lot of luck. And also I've been really lucky to be as healthy as I am, and be able to do this sport as long as I have, and hopefully continue to do it, as long as I can. Um, so I
yeah,
think there's a lot of luck,
yeah,
luck being born into a really lucky circumstance where I was able to have, opportunities to do all these various things, and take advantage of them. Super lucky.
yeah,
So yeah, I would say luck is a big part of it, you
yeah.
know.
It seems to be true, but it also seems to be when I hear about your approaches to things, it seems like it's also the idea that you can make your own luck, and I feel like you seem to grasp at each opportunity that you saw available to you. And it seems like if you do that in life, like something is going to end up kind of working out your way, even if it doesn't the first time or the second time.
Well, I do think I am a believer in kind of stepping outside your comfort zone. If that can be really a scary thing to do, but it usually always has a very positive upside, and I mean, that's true in kayaking, that's true in like going to a totally foreign land to kayak or do something else, um, you learn so much in those opportunities about yourself, and I would say 99% of the time surprise yourself and end up being able to do so much more than you think you could or that you imagined you would.
Mm-hmm.
you know and I think those kind of opportunities are something that we all probably need more of, and need to encourage more of in our lives, because it's easy to stay in your comfort zone. It feels really
Def-
good, you know.
definitely, definitely.
Um,
Couldn't agree more.
the only caveat to that I'm going to say is like if you're taking care of donkeys and you have to clean their hooves every day, you run a serious, serious risk of bodily injury about getting kicked. So it can be terrifying at moments to stay in your comfort zone.
Oh, I'll make a note of that.
Yeah, note to self.
Just in case.
Yeah.
And what I guess one last thing I think I'd asked you like in the previously when we were talking, and I didn't mention it this time, but I was asking you during all this, like, oh, did you ever do a residency anywhere? Did you ever do anything like that? And you were like, no, and I skipped that part in life. And I thought that was kind of cool that you're in a very I mean, medicine to me, it's a very prescriptive field with lots of certificates and training and all of this, and you sort of just took a different path through that, which I think is also a really cool part of this story. But how do you how do you continue? Like, how did you educate yourself throughout all this in medicine? How do you continue to stay abreast with the latest medical developments?
Well, I will say that I don't stay abreast with the latest medical developments to here, to the developed world medicine, because the
Mhm.
medicine that you see in Uganda is incredibly different. It's really different medicine because of what people have access to, and also, you have a huge infectious disease component in the form of malaria and diseases like schistosomiasis that we don't see in the
Oh,
U.S. For example, although there were 2 recorded cases of malaria, that were not brought in by travelers last year, and because of the changing climate, we may be seeing more of that.
hmm.
Um, but it's I really try to remain always in the position that I am learning and I don't have the answers. And I always need to learn more and study more and figure out what's going on. And, at the clinic, I'm not practicing medicine. I am consulting if needed, but that's handled by our doctors. So I'm not definitely in a position where I am taking the role of somebody who is fully, board certified XYZ.
I
I
see.
am, I mean, I'm there I will see patients and guide on treatment when needed, and give my opinion, but it's also a collaborative approach. And, that's as it should be, I think. But the medicine there is very different. It's, the only thing I will say that overlaps with what we see in the US is that we treat incredibly huge numbers of high blood pressure. And that, based on what I've seen over 20 years at the clinic, is really largely because it was undetected for so long. That problem has been there
Hmm.
for a very long time, but people, until, medicine sort of moved past just dealing with malaria and that kind of infectious
Hmm.
disease, they weren't looking at other things. Now we have good tools to deal with malaria, with HIV, pretty good tools for TB. We can look at these other things and go, wow, high blood pressure is a huge problem. We really need to do something about that.
Yeah. How
Um,
cool though that you can evolve
yeah,
and like get beyond just the basics and now start to allow
yeah,
people to have longer, healthier lives.
yeah. I mean, that's the hope anyway, and that's the idea behind all the education and prevention side of it too, to give people tools so that they can, basically exercise better care of themselves and, help their families live healthier lives too. So
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
that's a big part of it.
that's fantastic. Well, anything else you want to add before we wrap things up?
Just thank you so much for taking the time to interview me and ask so many great questions. It was really fun for me to be totally self indulgent and talk about myself for however long this has been.
Well, I think I
So
mean, I really enjoyed it. That's one of the reasons I like to do this podcast is because I get to talk to cool people like you, and I think other people will too. I've been getting lots of positive feedback from previous interviews, and I know a lot of other people are enjoying these. So thank you so much for
well,
spending the
awesome.
time. Yeah,
Yeah, well, thank you, Kevin, and please come to Uganda. Come visit whenever you can.
it's on my list. I would love to. Yeah.
All right, sounds
All right.
good.
Thanks, Jessie.
Thank you, Kevin.
Jessie provided me with a bunch of great photos, including pictures of the clinic in Uganda in the early days, as well as what it looks like today. She also included some photos of her paddling different areas throughout the years, and I'll post those on the Facebook and Instagram pages for this podcast if you want to check them out. On Facebook, it's Tales from the Crips, and on Instagram, it's Tales from the Crips podcast. So be sure and like or follow or whatever you do on those things if you want to see more photos about the podcasts afterwards. Additionally, there's a plethora of media out there throughout the years of the various adventures Jessie has gotten into with the clinic in Uganda and outreach to the kids clinic in New York and other things like that. And I posted many of those videos in the show notes. So be sure and check out the links there if you want to hear and see more about Jessie and what she's done in her life. If you're enjoying the show or simply want to pretend for your friends and family that you're enjoying the show, be sure and give me a rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you may get your podcasts. If you have any great ideas for guests that you think should be on the show, be sure and drop me a line at talesfromthecripps@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening.